said to me, it's not jolly. You know, he's right. It isn't jolly. How can it be jolly when we've got power cuts? Now, that was the question. I'd just like to pose this to you. Yesterday, we were treated to the news that the rail extension from Mathura to Beliata had opened. And somewhere along the line, I read it, the cost per kilometer in US dollars 10 million per kilometer. Be that as it may, as in the immortal words of Lasantha Vikramatunga, be that as it may, let's consider the Colombo Light Railway. 17 kilometers, 1,850 million US dollars, making a per kilometer total of US dollars 110 million US dollars. Now really, do we want stable power? Do we want jobs? Do we want better quality of life for everybody? Or do we need a $110 million per kilometer light railway? Is Sri Lanka's economy ready for such a huge investment in infrastructure? Or is this yet another scam in the making? Who knows? News First will bring you all the news as it happens. This morning, ladies and gentlemen, we have with us Mr. Lalithasiri Gunurwan. Iwan, how are you?
Well, I'm fine.
So, Citizen Gunurwan is fine. How are the power cuts in your area?
Well, that's not fine. That's the whole trouble, because we are discriminated, we feel.
We as in?
People in Panadur at least.
Are the people.
The citizens in outskirts of Colombo, because it looks like we are second-class citizens. We get power cuts, but not in the people in Colombo.
Well, that's
I mean,
true. I am from Quickie Central, also known as Mount Lavinia.
Yeah. Do you get power cuts?
Yes.
So then you're also discriminated. You're also second-class citizens.
And as I arrive home, the power cut starts.
Exactly. So now, what sin have we made for us to be treated as second-class citizens, and the people in Colombo whose air conditions are working 24 hours, when the poor kid in a remote area cannot light the simple two bulbs for his study?
There seems to be a problem.
Exactly.
But so now the minister says that this is all a thing in the past. By the 10th, which is tomorrow morning, everything will be fine. Why? What have we got?
Do you believe, Faraz, that the problem is over, or is it just a painkiller, that the pain is just subdued?
I think it would be fair to say that we've got a healthy dose of paracetamol.
Exactly.
Maybe about 1,000 milligrams.
The problem is still there, because there is a gap between the supply and the demand.
Right.
Electricity demand is catching up, and there are no supplies coming in the line. The Ceylon Electricity Board's long-term generation expansion plan is not being implemented. And various committees at various levels make decisions who are not even accountable. And if it is CEB only, then we can at least have an institution to hold it accountable. When we had only one institution, we had more power than when we have two institutions now. We have two government institutions, one is PUCSL and another one is CEB.
Isn't that a good thing though?
Yeah, you can have three, you can have four, then you will have only 4 hours of power. Not only 4 hours of power cuts, more the institutions, lesser the power we have in our country. Isn't it a funny thing? These power committees for us.
Yeah.
There are no statutory authorities for them. They're just being committees appointed by various politicians in this country.
Yeah.
They make decisions to cancel this power plant or this power plant. And when the power cuts come up, no one is accountable.
Are you bemoaning the virtual cancelling or abandoning of the idea to have two power stations in Sampur?
Well, I'm not saying whether the Sampur power plant or some other power plant somewhere else, or Kiravalapitiya or somewhere else. But what is important is, when there is demand growing, there should be least cost generation capacity adding into the system. So for that, CEB, as far as I'm aware, they have a 20-year generation expansion plan. which is
Right.
being rolled in every 2 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And then if abruptly one of those power plants are taken out from the system
Yeah.
without having a substitute,
Without having a
without implementing a substitute,
Yeah.
whether that be LNG, or may that be again another coal power somewhere else, or whether it can be major hydro, or whether it can be even wind or solar or any other non-renewable source.
Now the problem with hydro though is we are not in control.
Yes, so
Somebody else is up there is in control.
see, hydro has this climate dependence, that's true.
Yeah.
So, but then on the other hand, if you have capacity, if you have the hydro capacity, that's the cheapest. That's most environment friendly, and it's the cheapest source of probably the fuel, the energy. Now the point is this:
Yeah.
it has to be decided by whom? This long-term generation expansion plan, as far as I'm aware, is prepared by people who have experience and knowledge and education qualifications to do power planning. Those who have at least 4 years of university education behind them in electrical engineering and power systems planning, and years of experience behind them in the CEB or some other place,
Yeah.
sometimes even internationally. Now, their plan might be having some flaws. I'm not saying that there are no gaps there, or there are no hidden agendas even in that. I am not excluding those things. But who should decide on that? Similar people of similar capacity and stature.
Right.
Not just a set of committees who have no authority, who have no stature, who have no qualifications.
If they have no authority, how come they have been appointed?
Because they are appointed by some politician somewhere,
Right.
and the committee has no legal status, unlike CEB or PUCSL.
Yeah.
And the decisions are taken based on their recommendations by the politicians. And here we are, the poor man in the country, taking the pain of it. We are getting the power cuts, and now the minister says no more power cuts by purchasing 500 megawatts of emergency power from the private sector. Again, we are at the receiving end, because we are paying for the deficit that CEB is going to incur for expensive power purchases that CEB is going to make. Is that those?
How has the situation arisen that we need to be in a position where we have to, rely on emergency or supplementary power?
Because we have not implemented large-scale power plants or even renewable power plants whenever it is necessary and when it is appropriate. Because how much of small renewable that can be absorbed into the system is not something that you and I can decide.
Now,
That's a system engineering plan.
Actually, the Minister, Ravi Karunaka, on my program, said the same thing, in effect. He was bemoaning the lack of new projects, additional capacity into the system, which has now left us in this sort of mess.
Exactly. So lack means what? They are the ones who are in power, so they have to make the decisions.
Yes.
And they are making the decisions against the professional decisions made by the power engineers.
When ministers, I mean, Ravi K has only been in the business for a short period, but when ministers come there, isn't there a case that officialdom, the civil service who supports the minister, isn't there a case that some people say that the ministers of the day are misled by the officialdom?
Quite possible, but on the other hand, the civil service is without kind of the authority and the recognition that it used to be 20-30 years ago. The civil service cannot survive today without the blessings of the politicians. Unlike in Indian situation where the bureaucracy and the civil service is so powerful. In Sri Lanka it's not so. So those who survive in the system are the ones who are yes men to the ministers. Even the boards and the management committees that you appoint, they are at the mercy of the politicians. CEB's board cannot survive without the blessing of the minister. Okay. As long as we don't make.
So now you're saying that actually the blame is at the political door, not.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that it is either camp or this camp or that camp.
Yeah.
You are right. There may be lobbies in all corners.
Now, do you know the supplementary power that current minister is proposing, and it's already here, and I think that's why he chose the date tomorrow. Now, don't you think that we need a bit of this emergency kept on the side anyway?
Well, let's say whether it is...
Isn't that prudent?
Point is this, you need to have supplementary capacity for emergency situations to utilize.
Yeah.
True. The point is this, why are we taking it without planning? Now this is without planning. What you say as power being kept as a excess is a planned excess capacity.
Okay.
Now here we face an emergency situation. Emergency situation being faced without being prepared is poor planning for us. That is not a kind of supplementary planning that you plan for to be availed in a situation of excess demand and supply.
You're talking about planning. Here we have, as we said at the beginning of the program, the Beliat extension of the railway from Matra cost approximately $10 million a kilometer. Then we have the light railway proposed. The cost is $110 million a kilometer. So they're planning ahead. So can you blame them?
Now, who is planning? That's the whole trouble. There is an institution in this country which is called the Department of National Planning to plan the capital budget of the country. Department of National Planning is responsible for the economic viability of all these projects being implemented. Now, what are they doing when you see these kind of differences in capital cost intensity? Now, you talk about Matra-Beliata railway line, $10 million.
Yeah.
Sri Lanka Railway in 2010 constructed a railway line between Tandikulam and Omantha, 10 kilometers, 100% Sri Lankan. Just $1/3 $1,000,000 a kilometer, 1/3. And then Sri Lanka Railway got Indian contractors to do the northern lines at $2 million a kilometer. $1/3 $1,000,000 Sri Lankan construction.
That means $300,000.
300,000
versus 2 million.
2 million Indian one, 10 million Matra-Beliata, Chinese one. What is Department of National Planning doing? Now, Department of National Planning should immediately start questioning why is this difference?
Who's the Minister of National Planning?
I really don't know under which ministry it is this now, because it used to be in the Ministry of Finance and Planning. I don't know where it is located at this moment.
It must be National Planning.
Could be. Point is, there is no place where these rational questions are asked these days. Why?
Where should these rational questions be asked?
It has to be asked at various levels, from the planning from the institution, if it is railway or power or roads or whatever in that institution, then the respective line ministry, and then at the place where the capital votes are being made, that is Department of National Planning for capital budget and the national budget for the overall government's budget being presented, and the Ministry of Finance.
I don't believe that there are any ministers capable of understanding all this, which is why...
There may be ministers who are not understanding these things, but there are, as you said, bureaucrats and the professionals. Department of National Planning is full of planners.
But don't politicians try their best to belittle these professionals?
That's true. I mean, they are being marginalized. That's the whole trouble.
Because they know that they are going to be shining for a long time more than their pitiful little terms in Parliament.
Now, you asked another important question regarding this light rail system.
Yes.
It is important for us to reflect back about 4 years ago. These were the kind of things on which some politicians wrote books called Ala Palu Artike.
Yeah.
They were talking about these expensive projects which are being launched. Mind you, this Matra-Beliata or even Northern Line railways or even the highways, the expressways, or even certain ports and airports infrastructure. Those are all done on bilateral credit loans from certain countries.
Yeah.
And when it is bilateral loans, they are not competitively bidded, mind you. That's the secret behind it. You don't open it for competitive bidding. So Faraz, someone else can come up and bid if it is open for competitive bidding.
Yeah.
These are not competitively bidded. These are negotiated projects. The donor of the lender will tell you, okay, use my country's people, and they nominate the contractor. And that paves the way for certain people to play here, because the price, the cost per kilometer, as you said, that difference, 1/3 a million if you did it in Sri Lanka Railway, 2 million if it was on the Northern Railway line, and 10 million at the Matara-Beliyatta, and 110 million in the light rail system, which is SkyTrain going to the moon. Now the point is,
but yes,
all these are non-competitively bidded, unsolicited proposals. So,
but Mr. Gunran, Citizen Gunran, do you think that Sri Lanka's economy is robust enough for the people to be able to use these? Because I was looking at some data. The domestic loans given to the domestic sector as a percentage of the gross national income, Sri Lanka is around 47%. Okay. I then had a look at some other economies. I just looked at Korea, because years ago, in 1960, Sri Lanka was better performing than Korea when it came to per capita and all that. Their figure is 120 times the GDP, suggesting to me that Sri Lanka, you know, we're only at 47%. They've gone way over, which means they've got more money in their local market for domestic use. But in Sri Lanka, we don't have that. How many people are going to use these things?
South Korea is a classic example
Yeah.
of promoting the local enterprise.
Right.
You make available the capital resources and the opportunities of the local economy for the local enterprise to benefit from it.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying. When Sri Lanka is only the domestic debt is only 47%,
Exactly.
then we've got a huge gap, which if that money was available in this economy, our local economy will boom.
Exactly, I agree with you fully. So my point is, that shows Sri Lankan management of the economy is not taking care of the Sri Lankan national interest. That is why all these projects are being given to foreign firms to come up and fish out. We don't finally get anything out of it other than the railway track. Now Matara-Beliyatta, we opened the railway track, that's good. People can go by train. Train is the best way to travel, most economical by way of transport mode, and least environmentally polluting, least congestive. So expansion of the railway network we can be happy of.
Yeah.
But the point is, when you look at these costs, the way we implemented the project, the cost that we pay per kilometer is excessive, which we could have probably done 1/10 or 1/20th of it.
But then these the payoffs have to be made. Politicians and so on.
That you say, I don't say it.
Well,
I have no experience I have no kind of evidence to stand by and say.
Citizen Gunran, you've missed a big event in the history of our nation in that case. The Commission of Inquiry unearthed various information. I'm talking about payoffs. During the Commission of Inquiry, it was revealed that one chap at Perpetual Treasuries, he went off for a meeting or lunch or somewhere. When he came back, the PN or the guy who goes to the bank had left a parcel on his seat, 100 million rupees in cash. Yeah? So
I only said that I don't have evidence to prove it myself.
Well, you know, I have the same evidence you have, which is, it's all online. If you go and read from the President's website.
What I can see for us is extraordinary, abnormal, excessive differences in these capitals.
Whirlwind profits. Neil Amarasekara described it, not this particular
This can be
matter,
corruption,
but others.
this can be waste, this can be poor planning, this can be unscrupulous way of planning for projects. This can also be some political gains the people may get to please certain foreign governments where our sovereignty is sacrificed.
Yes, but professionalism has been chucked out of the window.
Agreed.
For example, you know, with those cows from Australia, the first 2,000 came and so on and so forth. Then this government, the new boys, went on about the previous ones. They did take no steps to cancel it. Then they brought these the balance of them. Now the point is, this is all back to front. When they brought this vast quantity in, they didn't have the proper feed in place. They didn't have the proper nutritious grass that these cows can graze on. So at the end of the day, this whole exercise, lack of professionalism, at least in this simple instance, they could have got that right. But no, now they are all just playing a blame game. Oh no, it was done in Basil's time. Basil said, no, no, it wasn't done in my time. You know, this blame game is just going on.
I agree with you fully. That's
Only
what
citizen Gunruan and citizen everyone else is affected.
We are affected, not only us. If we are affected, that's fine, because we are responsible. Electing these kind of lot of idiots to govern us. But the crime is the unborn grandchildren of our generations are going to suffer. Not only us, because most of these loans are coming due for payment, maybe in 30, 40 years from now. There is a generation which is yet unborn, and they are not even taking part in the decision-making process.
Did you notice in the Sunday papers, there was a little item, it wasn't little, it was a quarter page maybe, and it said that, about the Hambantota port, that you know, there was about 146 million that might be repatriated if we don't get our act together. But inside that story was an acknowledgement that the Chinese did pay for that lease, the swap, the debt equity swap. They paid 1.2 billion minus 146 million. So they paid. The money went to SLPA, the Ports Authority. And from the Ports Authority, it went to the Treasury. But the loan is still on.
Loan is still on. Loan is still being paid by us. And the money came in, settled some other things maybe,
No,
or kept it somewhere.
It just went in the pot.
And that's it. So the point is, and there are more crimes behind this for us. We lost a port for 99 years. For
Correct.
what? $1,200, $300 million?
It works out at 5 million rupees a day. That's
Now
the
what
cost.
do you say about the light rail system? $1,800 million. Now we are getting another loan. A country which sells a port saying that we cannot settle
Maybe
a loan.
they're building the light railway to sell that off as well.
Exactly. Some other thing will be sold the next day. And they are trying to build a railway line from Kurunagala to Dambulla Habarana, another $1,000 million.
There are people who claim, you know, they claim, oh, you know, our money is well made. We went abroad in whenever it is, and 6-7 years later, we own substantial, significant, world-class businesses in these other locations. But what they don't point out, for us to all understand this, is where the money came from. I'd like to tell you a small story about this, because in Sri Lanka, money laundering is big news now. Long time ago, not in Bethlehem, but in London, there was a businessman by the name of Mohammed Al-Fayed. He came along from Cairo, and he set up his life in London. He met, through some quirk of fate, the Sultan of Brunei, who gave him the power of attorney over his funds in Britain. Mr. Al-Fayed used those funds, it later transpired, to purchase a company called House of Fraser. He then split it up and it became Harrods and so on. Now, when push came to shove and the SEC over there asked Mr. Al-Fayed where he got this money from to make this purchase, because Tiny Rowland was making a big fuss about it, he couldn't really explain himself. It later transpired that he had the power of attorney for the Sultan of Brunei. meaning that he most probably used that. Now, do you know that Mr. Al-Fayed, all throughout his ownership of Britain's flagship grocer, Harrods, was unable to get his British citizenship, because clearly the British establishment didn't forgive his lies as to where the origin of funds came.
But here, where the origin of funds in Sri Lanka?
Now, this is why I mentioned the story.
Right. So we don't know where the funds are.
This was a man who wined and dined with the royalty. He was representing the world's richest man at the time, and he did not get it. And they forced him to divest himself of the Harrods Bank because the fund's position was not clear. Now there's transparency. And this happened a long time ago.
Most of the capital projects in Sri Lankan government these days, particularly infrastructure, there is no transparency in the planning process and determining the price. That lack of transparency paves the way for these kind of things where the money can swap somewhere.
Which is why some MPs are saying that all these projects, this fancy, a country in its lifetime is lucky to be able to have one refinery. Sri Lanka is double lucky because now we're going to have 2 refineries, and plus the one we have is going to be 3. So, we'll be refinery capital of the world with not a drop of oil to our name.
Now this is where I started my discussion to say that there is a big role the Department of National Planning should play.
But the national planning, you can't have the captain of the cricket team to be corrupt, can you? If the captain of the cricket team is doing side deals with bookmakers, for example, I'm not saying this has happened, I'm just an example, right? Now, then, can the captain expect the other 10 guys in the team to be above board and holier than thou?
You can't. That's why exactly the people of this country, the citizen Gunaruan and citizen Faraz, expect the institutions to work. We expect the CEB to work. We expect the PUCSL to work. We expect the Department of National Planning to work.
It's only fair. It's only fair expectation.
Yeah, but I'm with you to say that most of these institutions are run by politicians, and their boards are appointed by the politicians, and the captains, as you said, are appointed by the politicians, and you are because of that you are playing to the hands of those people. You are at the mercy of the politicians, otherwise you can't survive in the posts.
I think we must end the program this morning by quoting a message that I've just received, which we get messages on Newsline. Here we go. During the time of the kings, the people lived very happily, even though there was no power. Even during the 50s, only a few areas had power in Sri Lanka. Weren't the people of that time not happy?
Now also the people are happy, except the people in Colombo, because they have power. And the people in the outskirts are just like those days in the 50s, they don't have power now. That's the crime of it.
That's the crime.
Because there are two tiers of citizens.
So how does, the last and final question, how does citizen Gunaruan feel of having been shortchanged by the good governance team? Because they said a level playing field for everybody, an equitable lifestyle. Now you're telling me that there is a severe amount of inequity. The people of Colombo have power, and you in Panaduranami in Mount Winnie.
We are paying the tax at the same rates. Now, do you levy taxes in the outskirts at a different rate than the people in Colombo? This is crime. This is total inequitability, total discrimination. So here, as the message came to you, there is a set of people who are happier without power. And apparently, if that is the way that you make the people happy, there is a set of people in Colombo who have power but unhappy.
Citizen Gunaruan, thank you very much for being on Newsline. Wonderful, thank you. And that's the way it was on Newsline. Have a wonderful day, an excellent day ahead of you. Take care, and of course, God bless.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.